Well, it's approach.
You're
Approach.
near.
But in this context, in B, for example, you don't know if the notator is telling you specifically to approach a 4-degree contraction or just saying contract a lot, which could be anywhere up to 5 or 6 degrees, because then it's talking a more abstract. It's kind of like quantitative versus qualitative.
Exactly.
In one context, it's quantitative because it specifically says approach 4 degrees. So you know where you can't go past a certain point. You can finish anywhere between that. But if you're looking at it as a qualitative symbol, then you can end up anywhere.
That's what I always thought it meant, the latter.
No.
And is it, and does it, yeah, and then we can get into the whole thing of what it means in motif notation. But Brenton, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to take us on a sidetrack, but I think when Anne's pointed out motion versus destination.
Wait, we got two people. Just a minute.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Brenton, and then we can do this conversation.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I was just calling her a troublemaker.
Oh dear. Okay. Go ahead, Brenton. Would you repeat, because we didn't hear? Go ahead.
Sure. And definitely, I hear the outstanding issue of qualitative versus quantitative. But the point that I wanted to bring was this question of motion versus destination. Maybe it's even bigger than that, because what we're talking about is, well, I intend to go to 4 degrees of flexion, but then there's the actual, like, what do I actually get to?
Exactly.
So there's a distinction between the intention and the physicality of what happens.
Right.
And so maybe even bigger than motion versus destination, it's what you're intending and what actually happens. And in that sense, you know, if we had some intention symbol, then we could put anything in there. You know, I could intend to move, you know, with quickness, or I could intend to move with a large kinesphere. And then there's something else that maybe actually happens. Maybe what really happens is I'm moving in a very small kinesphere, but my intention, you know, so I just wanted to maybe jump the scale of this very important distinction.
Are you familiar with the intention bow?
Sure.
Yes, okay, right. I haven't used it a lot, but now that you mention it, I do remember seeing that.
Brenton, I would just tell you, once my students in the Lynne surf program learned about the intention bow, wow, it was, you know, they had whole scores that were just the intention.
And I don't mean to digress from this issue, but disappear is the same problem in reverse. The disappear sign, it's a free-for-all as to what people are saying it means, and so even from score to score, I mean, I probably bounced back and forth numerous times on my definitions, so it's like, really, what does also, in reverse, does disappear mean?
Is it complete, or do you go away from where you were? Do you
That's
begin to neutralize?
Some people are using it as an equivalent to return to normal, which I don't understand, because then it hasn't disappeared. Then again, we have the same problem. If it's returning to normal, then just use a symbol that we have to say return to normal.
Right. Now, kinetography, for whatever reason, Knust would not adopt our back to normal sign, although later also made up the same sign. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, he wouldn't, and so that was the kin.
Return to normal.
Which is very different from the way it's used in lava notation.
Well, here we're using return to normal and disappear. Technically, it's supposed to have 2 different meanings.
Yes, that's what
But the problem is that some of the people are using it. They're using in one measure, for example, they may use a return to normal to cancel one body part and disappear for another body part.
Okay.
And it's confusing because then in context, it's sometimes hard outside of context, and I can't think of an example, but you're like confused because from the next movement, both were canceled, both were returned to normal, and yet people aren't meaning it to just kind of, for example, if you have a torso tilt and you return it, you're tilted and your head's tilted.
Right.
You want the torso tilt to return to normal, but you want just the head to disappear, which means that it's not going to quite make it up with the rest of the torso. In that context, the disappear, how we use it, makes sense, I think, because it goes away, but it doesn't return to normal, and then whatever happens next will...
I use the go away sign when you've had a chest tilt. And then you go into a whole torso forward contracted. The chest is not back to normal, but the previous has gone away.
See, we would just write unfold for that. If the chest was full...
Then you're making unfolding, the action of unfolding, an important part of the movement. Whereas in fact, you don't even think about that. It just goes away.
So you're using the disappear as a pre-sign in
No.
that instance?
After
Discover all sorts of interesting
I have so much-
differences when we have these meetings that we had no idea about.
No, you have no idea how much theory from 1977 I have floating around in my brain right now.
While Anne is writing that, I just want to make a note so I'll know in the minutes to put this. I think that this issue that about Kay was talked about in the minutes of years past, and I just want to make a note for myself so that I'll look it up and I'll put it in the minutes. You know, it's online somewhere maybe.
Is it true that the disappear sign is drawn narrower in the increase and decrease sign?
Yeah, technically.
But I don't
yes, I
feel
try
like
to
that.
draw the
You try to
disappear
draw it
like
narrow,
that,
but sometimes it...
and that the inward
I know.
sequential movement is that. But
Yeah.
most of the time, people draw it.
And
gets
in
the-
Laban Writer, when you write transcribing in Laban Writer, do you make sure to draw one narrower and one wider?
You try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do.
Mhm.
To me,
Wish you
at least in
resize it.
at least in motif notation, to me, it's just such a to talk about the difference between the drawing. It's so dicey.
May has a question.
Oh, sorry, May.
For the video purposing, can you say again those twos are?
Disappear.
One is disappear and
Right
one
up
is
to-
Increase, decrease.
increase. The narrower symbol, the narrower V should be disappear. The wider symbol is...
And is it curved at the
Increase.
bottom, kind
No,
of, a
no,
little bit, or
No,
not?
No.
It's
No.
just narrower.
Yes, you
But-
bring it narrower and more to
Yeah.
the point.
But when you're drawing small, to me, I wish you didn't have a thing where the rule is if it's a little, if it's drawn narrow or wider, because to me they're so similar.
But
That
again,
everyone-
Laban Writer
Transcriber,
looks
it's
different.
easy-
What?
It
Laban
doesn't.
Writer.
It does,
Yeah.
okay.
But also,
I would think
even in
though
even in a handwritten score in context, it
In
makes
context,
sense.
okay.
You just
Hopefully, and there's the,
I
hopefully.
mean, you also have, if you have any transcriber who is not familiar, they can easily make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get back to something, can we think of an example, cause I also love the intention vote. But getting back kind of to, Brenton and that discussion, could we think of an example where we would use the intention bow to clarify, that you're doing something like A or B, and yet you have a different attitude about it, so I put in the intention bow what I think I should do, even though I show that I'm doing something else.
May I
Yeah,
suggest that this is a little bit beyond
Mhm.
what
Okay.
we're trying to
okay,
establish?
all right.
Because
Are we
where am
back
I?
to
N. We come up to O.
Okay.
Try this.
I think,
Oh, and then one put. I think this one's probably dead, because I want to put a lid.
Gesundheit.
Now,
There's a blue. Can you
we
toss that in the
know-
trash?
that the X or the wide sign inside a diamond refers specifically to space, not to body. And so, if you use that, you are talking about distance of x.
In all of these examples, can also n be used in double n?
Oh yeah, what happens if I start here and I go here, or is it
Yeah.
here? If I start flex, then I write double or even single n.
Yeah.
Does it mean I can go here, or does it mean I have to go here?
It is distance, a small distance.
I know, but
Because I've said I'm talking about distance. So
Are we're-
wherever you are, it's a small distance of contracting. That is my suggestion as to what it should mean.
and I this would open up a whole other conversation, and we have until 5 more minutes, I think. But how does this, I would want to go, if we can, think about this. How does this affect that whole conversation that we had, 10 minutes, about how we were using these signs when we were talking about distance of the legs from the floor? Remember that whole conversation? And the new use of these signs versus the plain contraction and, what's the backwards end? I want to say extension, but contraction, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, larger distance.
Right, that whole, in the new text, the newest text, there was a whole introduction of the meaning of that in relationship to the legs and the distance from the floor. And then we continued the discussion with Janos, there was a and how does the meaning of, that you're giving to these symbols fit in with the meaning when it's used in that other context?
It's
Do you understand?
It's unified.
Do you feel
I
that?
think
Yes, because you're talking about, the minute you include that, it becomes very clear, correct?
it's a spatial. You are now talking about spatial distance.
And so when you put when you're doing with the legs from the floor as opposed to the legs, the distance from
From the
each
body.
other, and one is in a space symbol and one is without the space symbol, is there a consistency in the way they're used with that one, in that one context, and in this context? Is there consistency in the analysis?
I introduced the use of these signs in relation to distance of legs from floor,
Right.
or distance from leg to leg, because the single X or wide sign suggests the state of the limb, stretched or bent, and so
Oh, okay.
to make clear that I'm talking about distance, I made the suggestion of adding the diamond. And some people said, you don't need it, everybody knows what it means. So it's a question of, it's there to use if you want to be absolutely clear. Yes, it's a bit more writing, more clutter, but
it's useful,
clarity.
Anne, to hear your your logic of why the logic of how you came to give those symbols meaning, because that bit of it was never a part of our discussions. Your logic that you just gave, that why the single X would mean one thing and the X in the space when it comes to the legs. So I think that's very useful. Do you know what Sandra is looking at me.
No, because we talked about this years ago already. So for me, this is like nothing new. This is something that we've been using, it seems, forever.
I'm talking about with her logic of when she put
That's
the
what
new
I'm
thing
saying.
for the
It's
legs.
not new. For some of us, it's not new, because we've discussed this with Anne.
In with the legs?
Yes.
The leg gesture, because it was a
That's
huge
new. She
controversy.
wrote it on the 4th edition.
This-
It's, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
there
I'm
was a
sorry.
huge
That's the new
controversy in the
idea.
theory meetings about it, I recall.
Well,
But
it's in the-
anyway, it's a side
It's
issue.
in the theory meetings. The theory minutes. Sometime in the
Right.
80s already it started.
Okay, well, that's very I mean, and then, anyway. But I do think that this, when we're thinking about the meaning, when we're thinking about the meaning of these symbols in one context or one family of symbols, it's, for me, really important to think about how their meaning fits in with or applies to their meaning and when we use them with other families of symbols. Because I think we get into trouble when we give them one meaning in one family of symbols and another meaning in another family of symbols.
Well, I think they should have a very clearly stated meaning.
Yes.
So it's not a question of context with other symbols or context in a style of dance.
Right.
You are making that statement, and the person working with the score will find a way that makes sense. I'm always one for pinning down, if you can. Say what you want. I remember Louis Horst, I was writing a piece in the early days, and I was very flowery and I don't know what. And he had me in to go over it, and he said, "What are you really trying to say?" I said, "Well, bump, bump, bump. Then why don't you say it?" It was such a lesson. So.
But a lot of the time when you explain things in words, it's not what's said, it's what's not said. If you remember the example, we had that discussion about the bar line and a notation score. Did the time that the bar line occupied belong to the symbol before or the symbol afterwards? And you said, no, it's like two different paddocks.
Two different
paddocks, fields that join up like that there is no bar line or there is no dividing line between it.
You had a fence in there.
Yes,
No,
you
there
have
is
a
no
fence
field.
between two fields.
Yeah, right.
And so the fence has no time. So you go through the first field up to the fence and the next field after the fence. But so, unfortunately, on paper, these various lines take space, and especially if they need to be doubled. But they are not counted.
And that's why we all had different ideas as to they belong forwards or backwards until you explained it, and then we said, oh, now we understand.
And
but it was something that wasn't said in the explanation.
Yeah, but I think things like this need to be clearly established, because I have had students who wanted things to start at the bar line and finish or whatever, and it just gets confusing. So we have to state this is the convention, and it works.
It sounds like when we were talking about, I remember this, seems like such a picayune thing, and does it, a microsecond above or microsecond, and I remember Tina saying, so what difference is it, people are not,
I agree with Tina. Why did it become such a huge thing in music? No one thinks twice about a bar line. You have the note before, the note after, the bar line divides the two, it's not a big thing. So when did it become such a
Well, when I worked with Doris Green via correspondence over a couple of years, where we parted company was her understanding of the bar line and the moment before, the moment after, and she couldn't take that on board. We just missed all the time. So, she now made her own notation, and I haven't gone into it, but that was the point, you see, where she just couldn't accept the convention that we have established.
And that then always leads to the issue of on what issues, for example, this issue, is it important or necessary to say what the convention is? It means da-da-da, regardless, it means da-da-da, and we all agreed it means da-da-da. Or when is establishing such a convention a hindrance and we need to leave it open? When do we leave
so
things
that
open?
goes in your glossary. It's not standard
Right.
Robin notation.
So Anne, are you proposing this at the upcoming ICL?
No,
The use?
I
Or is
haven't.
this just between,
Um,
because what kind of shocks me, it's just like, and when you think about it, it's like so stupid. When you initially, we did that for the legs, it made perfect sense. And yet, I never even thought to apply the same principles and theories to the arms. So I kept riding the arms the other way. It just never occurred to tie the arm, the dilemma was the same with the arms as with the legs.
Oh.
So started riding the legs with the diamond, and the arms just the old way, so it just,
Well, it's a slightly different problem. With the legs, let's be frank, the need for the size arose because you didn't want to have to write in between direction symbols in the leg gesture column. And then just saying very wide or very narrow or whatever immediately gave the desired performance. Nobody, people might not be exactly the same in their performance, but most of the time they aren't anyway.
I think that, am I right?
I think my time is up.
The time is up. This is really, isn't it interesting?
Woo-hoo.
A and B, and look what it evolved into. I love it.
I suddenly, I don't know why, thought of this and thought, this has never really been pinned down.
Very interesting.
So this might be a good opportunity.
Yeah.
I
that's
think
a-
it's been a wonderful discussion.
Thank you so much for
Before
Thank
we
you.
close,
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I'm new to the symbol E. How does it differ from D? Just, I'm new to that.
You don't
symbol
know about
E.
the motion E?
No. First time I see it.
Rather than continue, but I can give you some references,
Okay.
okay? And I will also make
it's
sure to
also
put it,
in Anne's red books.
and it's also in there's some beautiful explanation in your MOOC as well, which
Okay.
it has the same meaning. So I will give you some references, we do need to move on, but it's a wonderful symbol, I
Did that
think.
example end up in here?
Sorry?
The example E, did that end up in here, or is it just in the red book series that I've seen? Probably in the red book
Yeah,
series.
I have to look them up.
Spatial deviations, and
Yes.
there's one like right behind you,
Spatial variations.
spatial
yes.
variations.
And I want to
Thank
do
you.
body variations,
Yay.
but I need the money and the person
This
to
is
work.
No,
on
not
it.
sequential.
Which one?
Spatial
I know,
variations.
I'm looking for which one it is.
Is there one up in the
Number 9.
Mira's pile up on top back there?
It's number 9.
Oh, do you have one here? Oh, we have one here, May, thank you.